leaving flesh and blood behind. At a fraction of the cost, they say, taking every job away. White-collar workers at their desks, blue-collar hands put to the test. The algorithm never rests while we're all failing every test. 18 trillion in the red, car loans, homes and hospital beds. Student debt that never ends, but who will pay when no one spends? The banks will crumble one by one when the defaults have begun. Machine cognition takes the lead, while human hearts can only bleed. We are the replacements, facing our displacements. This digital debasement has left us all replacements. They work without complaint, while we grow ever faint. The system shows no restraint. We are the replacements. The robots drive the trucks at night. The agents type with perfect sight. No lunch breaks and no sick days. No raises and no holiday pay. Big tech grows richer by the hour, consolidating all the power. The automated age has come, but where do we go when we're done? We are the replacements, facing our displacements. This digital debasement has left us all replacements. They work without complaint, while we grow ever faint. The system shows no restraint. We are the replacements. We are the replacements. Catastrophic waves approaching fast. How long can any human last? When cognition bows to code and every worker hits the road, unemployed and unemployable, our future's looking unliable. Homes and dreams foreclosed and sold, a story we've been told. The economy runs without a soul, automated and in control. We're standing on the outside, looking in, wondering how this all began. The replacements, just replacements.
All right, welcome back to the Aaron Day Show. This is Season 2, Episode 43. This is a very special episode with Mike Adams, who is joining us live. We are at an earlier time than usual. The Aaron Day Show is usually at 6 p.m. on Monday and Thursday, but this is a terrific opportunity to talk to Mike live. And I know the timing is a little bit different, but I do encourage you, if you are watching this now, to like and share so that we can get the view count up. Certainly we'll be spending a lot of time promoting this episode after the fact as well, because tonight's topic is an incredibly important topic. If you are familiar with the Aaron Day Show, then you are already very familiar with Mike Adams. I talked about him very well. He's been on the show before, and also have been talking about him basically every episode for the last few months or so since he released his new AI, which you can download at brightu.ai. I highly recommend that you do that if you haven't already. This is an opportunity for you to have an AI in your own self-custody, not connected to the internet, that has been trained on real information, unlike the major models. So trained on everything from alternative medicine to a whole host of other data sources, which I'm sure Mike will explain in greater detail. But I have been on this show, at least for the last few weeks, interacting with the AI live. So people have been coming on board and asking questions. And originally it started out, people would just ask me generic questions, and then I'd type it into the AI and read the answers. And then I built an interface to be able to chat with the AI, and we could actually play back audio and video. So we've been having some fun with that as well. So you can download the AI yourself. But in any event, in the interest of time, I'll bring Mike up right now, and because there's so much to cover that I'm sure we'll run out of time. But Mike, how are you?
Aaron, it's awesome to join you. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and love your work, by the way. Love what you're doing. I really want to submit it, and I really appreciate that you're using our AI to help augment some of what you're doing. And I'm just thrilled to join you. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So the last video that we played at the intro is something that you just released this morning, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's a very poignant video. Do you want to describe kind of what on behind that, what your thinking was in putting that out?
Yeah, I wrote that for this appearance, but of course I release it separately. It's called The Replacements, and I assume we're going to be talking about this theme quite a bit here because you and I both know, Aaron, you and I, we talk to frontier model developers. We see what's happening in the labs, in the frontier model companies. And you and I know, and I think most of your audience knows, that AI is so much further ahead than what the public understands or what the politicians understand. We are way beyond, predictive word, fill in the blank types of models. We are at cognition. Really advanced cognition, hierarchical understanding of the semantics of language, meaning, content, reorganization, summarization, expansion, translation, all of it. These AI models are incredibly smart right now. And as a result, Aaron, they're going to replace so many jobs. In America alone, there's going to be a day, although it's a couple of years off, where the unemployment rate in America will exceed 50%. And even right now in customer service jobs, for example, even Goldman Sachs just put out a report talking about how probably 78% of those jobs can be replaced by AI that exists today. And you go across all these industries, as you know, in fact, Goldman Sachs concluded 25% of the desk jobs could be replaced right now. In a year, you know what's happening to these AI models, how much more advanced they're becoming. In a year, there's potential for 50% replacement of desk jobs. And you fast forward 3 years or 4 or 5 years, then it's the labor jobs with the robots that will have huge replacement rates for transportation, driving, agriculture. We're going to have robot crop pickers, in the fields, picking the foods. And the question is, what's going to happen to all the humans? So that song called The Replacements is about that scenario because it will lead to a wave of financial institutions collapsing. That is in the very near future. There you go.
That's well said. But actually, there is this disconnect. There's a huge disconnect with the public. I was just at a Brownstone Institute event, and I would consider the Brownstone Institute to be pretty cutting edge in terms of a lot of different areas. But there was an overarching theme that I would say was anti-AI, but also there was skepticism about AI's capability. And then there's another arc to this, which is there are a lot of people trying to push this idea that AI is a bubble, and then they compare it to the dot-com bubble. They're saying things like, well, this is even worse than the dot-com bubble. And I was on a panel with Ed Dowd and a few others, and I brought up a couple of points. One, while overall the dot-com bubble, there was a lot of carnage, this is part of that creative destruction process. And if you look at, 20 years later, what's happened, the largest, most important companies, whether you like them or not, came out of that era. And so, yes, people were investing wildly in things like pets.com and some things that made no sense. Well, that wasn't a function of the technology being bad. But what we got out of that whole era is we have Amazon, we have, Facebook, we have all of these other companies, Google, that people use on a daily basis. So even making that comparison to me, it doesn't make sense. But beyond that, as a result of just calling it a bubble, they are basically shying away from even using it. So there's this attitude of, well, the whole thing is going to implode. Nobody's going to be using this, so I don't have anything to worry about. And to me, this is a big error. And something that I've been trying to do is to raise people's awareness to the fact that AI is inevitable. It's here. But it's similar to the situation that we have with digital currencies. Are we going to have a freedom version of it or a tyranny version of it? I mean, what do you think? What do you think of that assessment?
Well, I think your assessment is spot on, and I share your conclusions here. So it's critical to understand that there may be AI stocks that are overpriced right now, which I don't even track the stocks because I don't buy stocks. I don't own any stocks. I buy gold and silver and crypto, and I invest in technology like we're doing. So I don't own any stocks. Yeah, could there be a correction in the stock price? Yeah, probably. Is NVIDIA worth $5 trillion? Maybe. The thing is, my company alone will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on NVIDIA hardware this year. And NVIDIA can't make it fast enough because the demand is like 500% more than their production. So it's hard to call that a bubble. If there's a bubble, there would be a glut of products that people don't want. And if you look back at the dot-com bubble, which I called out at the time, I predicted it in advance and warned people about it. You had all these eyeballs on websites like drcoop.com or whatever, and they had these crazy high valuations, but those sites weren't solving real world problems at all. They weren't doing anything. You couldn't make an argument that 10 million people coming to this website and seeing the website solves some kind of problem in society. Whereas today with AI, like for example, if you go to our AI engine, brightu.ai, I wrote that code using AI. I did it as an experiment to see if I could skip my entire R&D team and just build a site myself with all the APIs and everything, and just using vibe coding, and it worked. So AI today replaces engineers, it replaces paralegals, it replaces customer support reps, and it does so incredibly effectively. In fact, I've seen studies, this one study I think was a joint study out of MIT and Harvard that showed that doctors reading x-rays and looking for signs of cancer, chest x-rays or lung cancer, that the doctors alone, without AI augmentation, I think their accuracy was somewhere around 72% with the diagnosis. With AI augmentation, that went up to 74%. But if you take the doctor out of the equation, then the accuracy of the AI alone, I think, was 92%. So humans in many areas actually contribute, and I know this is going to trigger some people, humans contribute what we call negative cognition in many areas. And again, I know that's offensive to a lot of people because you always think you're smarter than the machines. That is no longer the case. I mean, Aaron, I even say, I'm the health ranger. I've taught health and nutrition for 25 years. I'm kind of like a walking encyclopedia of nutrition information. I know nothing compared to the engine that we put out. The engine knows more than me, obviously, and it knows more about nutrition and health than any doctor living today or any doctor that has ever lived in the history of planet Earth. And it's free. I mean, it's at your fingertips. We've got it running on phones. We've got it running on laptops, okay? You've got a compressed version of all the world's information at your fingertips. And the cognition demonstrated by these engines is absolutely superior to most entry-level workers' demonstrations of cognition today. So the difference, Aaron, just to summarize that is, .com boom didn't contribute anything to the world, didn't achieve anything, didn't build anything, didn't do anything. That's why it was overpriced, except it built out a lot of infrastructure. The AI boom right now is actually demonstrating high levels of cognition, development, achievement, and it's here to stay. And yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm pro-human, just to be clear. I'm not saying let's replace all the humans. My song is a warning about what's coming, that we have to learn to use AI in order to up our game. And even in my own company right now, if I were hiring people, which I'm not at the moment, but if I were hiring middle managers, I would not hire a person who wasn't using AI daily. I would not hire a person who wasn't willing to learn vibe coding, no matter what their role. So the people that are going to do the best in this new economy are people who learn how to use these tools to augment their own human intelligence. Because anytime you turn on AI and you work with it, your IQ goes up about 20 points. And that's what I want in my company. I want people who have augmented intelligence, who still have that human innovation, the creativity, the passion, the morals, the philosophy that we believe in, pro-human freedom and decentralization. But they need to use the machines to augment their productivity. Otherwise, you're obsolete.
I agree with that 100%. And I started when I had you on a long time ago, or if maybe I was on your podcast, we were talking about the NVIDIA DGX Spark, which is the little mini supercomputer. And this was before it was out. I think it was earlier this year. They announced it, and then there was a wait list, and it took a long time. And
we now just got them. right?
Yeah. So I just got mine a couple of weeks or so ago, but it's a game changer. And what you find is once you start using them, I mean, we've launched 6 sites. I've done all of the coding. There's no one else involved at all. And then the more time you spend on it, you refine your processes and you understand how this works and you get your environment set up. I'm seeing exponentially increasing productivity gains the more time that I spend doing it. I mean, to the point where I actually took that computer and my Mac Studio with me to Salt Lake City and did a whole bunch of work and knocked out a new project while I was on the road. That's how intense this is. And what I try to explain to people, I see 2 different models happening here. And so there are people that will say, and they'll share the news that some kid was using ChatGPT as a therapist. And after 4 weeks of interacting with ChatGPT, that person was nudged into killing themselves, and therefore all AI is bad.
Yeah, well, how many cancer patients go to a doctor and an oncologist and then they're convinced to kill themselves with chemotherapy? Hundreds of thousands a year in America alone. Right. So every time people tell me, AI is not perfect medicine, have you talked to human doctors? Because they suck.
Well, that's absolutely true. But then I also say, so there is this dividing line between the big tech models and models like what you have, which I know it's not Enoch anymore, or to confuse the domain names, it's brightu.ai is where you can download it.
Correct.
What matters is what data are you pulling from, and then which model are you using to interact with that data? And then is there some other layer on top of that that's further filtering it? And so when you take companies like Anthropic or OpenAI, they trained this on Reddit, and they train these models on on the general internet. Well, if you're training it on slop, you potentially will have a bad outcome, right? But at the same time, these models can be very good for coding. Claude is great for coding, but Claude censors me half of the time when I'm actually trying to pull content out of it. And it becomes this situation where you're using the AIs, you learn which models are good. Somebody's saying I have been muting when Mike speaks. That's what I've been trying to do. But anyway, you end up learning which models to use in which circumstance. If your approach is, I'm just going to use a big tech model and I'm going to assume that what comes out of it is accurate, that's a poor approach, but that's also a poor approach in life. That would be like buying a singular book and then assuming that that's the sole source of knowledge. I look at this kind of as we build our own personal libraries, and those libraries expand over time. You can also, build your own library of data that you can then plug into an AI. And so it becomes it's an evolving and learning process. And I think people need to understand that, as opposed to, I think the best analogy I heard is that in the worst technocratic big tech case, we go from being the remote controlling the TV to being the TV itself, which is certainly a possibility. Or it could be the other way around, where we are significantly more empowered by exercising our own judgment over the data that goes in and which models that we're using to solve various problems.
Okay, well said. A lot to explore there. I'll try not to talk when you're talking because of the audio feedback. I'll try to segment it. But the way this is going in the future is everybody watching this, you need to collect a massive corpus of your own context. So you need to collect PDF files or other text files, whatever, of the books that you like, the content that you like, the articles that you like, and you need to store this locally, because the context window that models support is continuing to increase dramatically. And the way that local AI models are going to be able to work in the future is with RAG augmentation of a large amount of local knowledge. Now, what we've done with our model, which is the current flavor is called Enoch, but it's at brightu.ai. And it won't be called Enoch. We're going to release a new model in 2026 that's just called Brighteon AI. But what we did there, as you can tell, when you download the model and start talking to it out of the box, it's already extremely well trained on health and nutrition. It'll tell you about the dangers of vaccines. It'll tell you about the history of false flags. It'll tell you about inflation and fiat currency printing and all of that. It's trained on over 10,000 books that I personally curated, plus hundreds of millions of pages of content that I curated over the last couple of years. And that's why it works out of the box without a RAG layer. It doesn't have to have any wrappers or layers at all. It's just out of the box. You just give it a standard system prompt, and it's amazing. People are using it for all kinds of things. I've got people using it, they're using Claude to write local code that talks to our engine using an API from something like LM Studio. And they're using it to write papers, to do research. And I've used it that way as well. So it's a very robust model that took us about 2 years, Aaron, to figure out how to retrain the base models in order to do that. And just for your audience, the current base model that we're using there, that we heavily modified through a number of techniques that we had to develop. We had to write our own code to do these techniques, signal to noise ratio analysis of the vector database relationships, et cetera. We use right now Mistral Nemo 12B as the base model, because we found that Mistral, which is a French company, they have done, in my opinion, the best job on making their models actually trainable. And even then, we failed, 50 different ways that did not work, or that broke the model and started speaking gibberish or whatever. Finally, we figured out an approach that works, and that's what we now use for all the training that we're doing. And just like you, we have GDX Spark hardware now from NVIDIA. And even though it's not the fastest GPU, it's got large memory, right? So we can train floating point 16 models, even larger parameter models, 24B, whatever, on that hardware. It just takes a while, but it's all trainable. So what we're going to be doing, Aaron, is we're going to keep releasing open source, free of charge, more and more models that people can download and run locally for local inference. And also at the same time, our data set continues to expand. Right now, we are going through a classification process of the entirety of every science paper that's ever been published on this planet in every language. And I've forced myself to become very good at handling the storage of hundreds of terabytes of files, because it's a nightmare, actually. And I had to switch everything over to Linux, which is great. Linux has been fantastic for this purpose. Windows is useless for any kind of large scale projects. So everything's Linux. All the custom code now is written by Claude. and I'm the designer of all the code. This is my project, but we're going to be releasing more and more models, all free of charge, all downloadable to promote decentralization of human knowledge and to bypass censorship. So I'm sure your audience, they already know they're very sophisticated, but let me just point this out for any newbies. Once you download a model and you run it locally, number one, no one can censor it. No one can modify it. No one can spy on it. No one can surveil you, okay? The entirety of human knowledge compressed into your pocket, free of charge. Like, this has never existed in the history of our world. It's almost like magic, but it's actually math. So there you go, Aaron.
Yeah, and I've actually I've had this similar experience. I mean, I've used Claude to write software to take data from various sources, scrape it online. Mark Passio has this hard drive called Arc, which has 8,000 books on the occult, plus tens of thousands of audio clips and video clips, and I wrote a program using Claude that uses the best assets of my Mac and the DGX to process in parallel these different formats and put it into what's called a vector database, so that I can call that data using Enoch or using another AI model. And so all of this now is on my local machine. And so this is really empowering. I was trying to show this to people at Brownstone as well, because obviously, if you are using the big models, you're not getting good health information out of them. I mean, and I showed people this when I first downloaded Enoch onto my computer. I'm like, oh, well, what are top 10 natural cures for cancer or whatever? Immediately spit out actual results. You cannot do that, or you can't get any response, or certainly not anything that's useful, other than a whole series of disclaimers coming from the other models, right? And so right away, I'm like, wow, this is great. And then I can plug in other data into that, because there's a cutoff point, right? I mean, you train your model up to a certain point, but it doesn't have real-time information. So, okay, well, that's solvable. I can pull information in from Perplexity or from Grok and then run that through Enoch. So you can supplement the information that you have with any updates or any information that might be necessary that's more real time. And so it's really powerful. And then you get into creating your own workflows and your own type of information. And as I've shown people, with the ability to do kind of audio and avatars, you're going to be able to create your own personalized news network based on your life and your information, because a lot of this then becomes feeding your own information into your own system. So now I'm taking all of my podcasts, everything that I've written, everything that I've done, and loaded this into the system. And now this is an easy way for me to get access even to my own work. Yeah. And I'll tell you an area where this is, so I have this set up. So I have these 6 different sites that I'm working on and everything else. And I have these, Claude MD files or whatever. And I have another, agent that just goes in and pulls what's going on in real time with all of my projects, and then maps that against what the latest news is on AI, and including things like drivers or whatever. And it gives me a news report with a bullet list of things that I can do based on the most recent information today to improve all of my projects.
Let me show you. Aaron, you and I think so much alike. It's really incredible. Let me show you a screen from my laptop. This is the new censored.news that I wrote using vibe coding. Can we share that screen? Is that cool? Okay. Censored.news, and I want to show you here. We crawl 80 different websites that are all independent media websites, including Brownstone right here. And then we use AI prompting to pull out the top trends, as you can see here. These are trends, okay? And then you've got them in food, you've got them in finance, you've got them in tech and energy and everything. You click play here, there's a podcast. And this podcast is, of course, AI generated. And in addition, if I want to analyze something here let's say I want to know what are the implications of this, like patients are rejecting toxic chemotherapy, embracing vitamin C, IV therapy, mistletoe therapy. I can click analyze implications here, and then it kicks over to brightu.ai, and it runs down a massive implications analysis. Look, here's the financial implications, social and cultural, technological, then medium term, and it gives long-term implications, shift in healthcare spending, et cetera. Aaron, you're not going to get this from CNN. You're not going to get it from the New York Times. You're not going to get it from, any news organization out there. And this is the future, is ingesting information the way we want it, with the analysis that we want, with a much deeper understanding that is customized to our particular interests. And that's what I see you doing there. I'm doing it as well. And this entire engine was also built just using nothing but vibe coding. It was an experiment. I have an R&D staff that keeps Brighteon.com up and running and things like that, a lot of other projects. But I specifically, Aaron, I chose to bypass the staff for this project as an experiment. And it worked. It worked. So, there's your answer. And I'm not firing the engineers. I just want to be clear. They still work for us on other projects. But this way, as you know, Aaron, when I have an idea, if I'm out jogging or whatever, and a cool idea pops in my head, I can come back, I can prompt the system, it can put that feature in, I can roll it out within a few hours instead of taking weeks waiting on other people. So it's a game changer for everything about information.
Yeah, it is a game changer. And, I hadn't coded for like 30 years. When I started my first company, I was doing some coding, and then I took more of the CEO business role and strategy role. But we had a lot of developers, and I've actually realized that it is easier, and it's actually somewhat of a problem, because it's easier to interact directly with the vibe coding system with these different models than it would be. It's faster than translating the requirements and giving it to somebody else to do.
That's right.
And actually to the point where it's become problematic, because I haven't figured out yet quite how to hand some of these things off, because you will actually lose significant efficiency. But it's not that much of a problem, other than to say this is how much of a productivity game changer this is. And then I also want to add that what I learned in the process. So I was experimenting, as I told you yesterday, with the idea of creating a multi-agent system that creates a book. So you have like, one agent that creates the outline, and another comes out that pulls out the research and then assembles it. And then you do kind of an editing process. You have like 7 different agents that are going through these different processes. And in the process of even designing the agents, it gets you to think about, well, what is the actual process that I'm going through when I do my writing? And is there something I could be doing better, even in the way that I was doing things before trying to add AI into the picture? And so it really has caused me to think, well, why do I do this? Why do I do this? Is there a better way to do this? And I find that when I take an approach to any problem where I start with humility, and I realize that whatever it is I think I might know, there are other ways out there. And I try to always keep that in mind every time I'm doing something, which is to not presume that I know everything. I might know something, but I don't know everything. And taking that approach is really liberating, because rather than trying to, prove or just use the thing to do whatever the action is based on your limited set of knowledge, it opens you up to new knowledge. And in the process, you even change your own thinking process. This is the exact opposite of what people worry about when they say, well, we're going to be controlled by the AIs. We're essentially going to become passive, and the AIs are going to be controlling us. It could go in that direction. Again, there's a freedom versus tyranny aspect, but at the same time, this can be a game changer that, not only 100x's your productivity, but it does, as you mentioned, it adds 20 IQ points, but it does change the way you perceive the rest of the world outside of even interacting with these digital systems.
Well, I want to say, Aaron, I agree with everything you just said. And to all of your viewers, I would say, if you're using AI and it makes you feel dumb, you're using it wrong. If you're using AI and it forces you to be smarter, now you're talking. That's the correct way to use it. Because as you just described, Aaron, when you're engaged in vibe coding projects, first of all, you have to clean up your own thinking process. You have to have a much deeper understanding of the process that's required to create a book. And you have to break it down step by step, which a lot of people have not done before. And what I've found is I've seen a lot of online videos of people saying, oh, all AI sucks. It all fails. The vibe coding doesn't work. It fails. And my answer is, you suck at prompting. Honestly, you got to be a better prompter. And, it's so funny. Even just yesterday, I've been studying advanced prompting techniques, and I learned about a new one that I don't even want to mention here because I had never heard of this before. I went back and I tried it, and I couldn't believe what it did. It took a process that in our own internal content generation used to be 7 steps, used to take many, many minutes, and it compressed it down to a single prompt. And it did all these 7 steps in one prompt in a non-reasoning engine, and I couldn't believe it. I had no idea that the engine was that capable, but it just proved to me that we are so far beyond, word prediction analysis. We are into the realm of really functional intelligence. And people who don't know that are going to be left behind in a horrible way. And culturally, let me mention this. Culturally, and I lived in Taiwan. I speak conversational Chinese. I have strong ties to the Taiwan technology community. And culturally, countries like Taiwan and China and even India are super excited about AI, and they are deploying it everywhere. And yet it's Western countries like America where there's all this skepticism about AI. And there's all this fear about AI, like it's going to take us over, it's going to control us. And I say, only if you let it. You have to become the master of the AI, and you can do that if you learn how to keep it in check and also how to prompt it, how to leverage it, and how to adapt your own career, your own interests, your own ingestion of information, your own knowledge. You will become smarter. You will become more effective. And you can launch 1,000 different businesses if you just understand that you can ask AI to help you. There's a joke, Aaron, you'll appreciate this. I was doing a podcast about how people can download our AI model and use it. And I said, if you don't know what to do, just go online and ask the AI model how to download it and install it, because we have a web-based version. And then, some people, when I said that to some people, they said, oh, I didn't know you could ask AI that. And I said, you can ask it anything. You can ask it about problems on your iPhone. You can ask it about troubleshooting your clothes dryer. And in our model, by the way, I trained it on the instructions for disassembling and reassembling 3,000 firearms. So, there's no limit to what you can ask it. And if you don't know what you can ask AI, just ask AI what you can ask it. See, that's the joke. People need to just start asking it what their questions are instead of thinking, I can't ask it that. There's this weird psychological barrier. I don't know. Maybe you can explain it.
I've seen that psychological barrier as well. And so what it is, well, I don't know if this is what it is an explanation, possibly not the explanation, but a lot of people that are afraid of technology in general, the way that they approach the problem is that they come up with a strategy for how they think it works. But they're coming at it kind of from a perspective of fear. So when it doesn't work the way that they think it should, they end up getting angry at the AI itself. I've actually seen this happen as well. So this goes back to my earlier point about approaching it from the standpoint of humility and just asking. Because usually what it is you're not, you need to ask a couple of layers above where you're asking. You're trying to get one particular answer, but you need to just break your question up into smaller and smaller chunks. And a lot of times there's this idea of, well, if I don't get the answer back right away to the question that I'm looking for, it's the AI's fault. But in reality, as you mentioned, it really is all about prompting. Are you really asking the right question? Maybe the question that you think that you are asking isn't even the question that you want answered. You haven't thought through the question well enough. And so I think to this point, if you start breaking these questions down, and if you're willing to approach it with humility and ask, really be willing to ask really basic questions and not feel stupid about asking those really basic questions.
And can I jump in, Aaron, and add something? Sorry to interrupt, but you can also use meta prompting, which is you ask the AI engine to write the prompt that would accomplish the following thing. And you can just tell it, you are a great prompt engineer. I need you to write a prompt that's going to help me, crawl a news website and extract the headlines. And how would I write that prompt? Boom, there you go. Then it writes the prompt, right? You take that prompt and you put it back in to Claude or something, and now you're crawling the site. See, you got to, just like you said, Aaron, you got to think levels above this. You can ask it, how do I approach this problem? And the way most people look, like here's an example. Most people are one-shotting AI engines and they're not happy with the answers. Well, would you one-shot a scientist on the street? Like, hey, scientist, what's the answer to this physics problem? And the scientist is 42. Okay, well, maybe that's not the right answer. Maybe if you give that scientist some context, here's the science papers, here's the theories, here's the thing, go crunch this, and the scientist has time, then a little bit later, he's going to come back with the right answer. That's the way you got to work with AI. The one-shot answer is usually not the one you want, especially, you've seen this, I'm sure, Aaron, when you're building books. You're building books with AI. You're not going to one-shot a book. Are you kidding me? No. And by the way, my prediction is the book industry, I'm not trying to trigger people, but the book industry is toast. The book industry is toast. Again, sometimes people get offended when I just tell the truth, but you're not going to go out and buy books. You're just going to ask an engine to give you a book on the topic that you want to learn. I'm talking about nonfiction here, right? But the book industry is toast, right? Do you see it any other way, Aaron? I'm curious.
I see it that way as well. In fact, I actually had a call today. I'm working with a group that is taking a small group of authors and taking their information and putting it into and using AI to make 20-page summaries as a way to take complex topics and make it accessible to a wider audience. But to your point, at the end of this process, it becomes completely customized and it becomes completely personalized. And
that's right.
And to this whole issue around fear around AI and that we're going to become dumb as a result, essentially we're going to be outsourcing our cognition entirely to these machines. I go back to the fact that Socrates was against writing. Socrates' view was writing would be horrible because we would lose our ability to do oral storytelling and we would lose our ability to, our memory would deplete. And then as the printing press was being rolled out, there were people that were anti-printing press saying, well, this printing press is going to result in the mass production of a bunch of slop, and then this is going to basically cause brain rot, not the terms being used in the 1400s, but essentially that was it. I've actually been thinking a lot recently about, okay, if I go to read a whole book, and you're right, we're talking about nonfiction here. All right, well, what is my own mental process when I'm reading the book? How do I extract information out of that? And can I get to a way where I can apply whatever that algorithm is to the text so that I can get the information out of it, as opposed to having to even go through my own long form process of reading the entire book? So I've been thinking a lot about reading itself. And
it's a supervised fine tuning of bioneurology.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
Yep. And so I don't think this is something to be afraid of. I think there are going to be some phenomenal developments. And again, this is going to come down to some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners and everything else. Great. You're going to be able to customize that front end for how you get access data. I think it's just going to be, it's an absolute game changer. And people are holding on to this as if, well, reading is the big thing, as if it wasn't a technology, as if book publishing wasn't a technology, right? There's a gap here in the way people are thinking about this, and it's just because this is what they're accustomed to and they feel threatened by it. But clearly, it's going to transform the book. I'm working on my own book, and I'm kind of like, it's taking me a while. It's taking me actually a long time, because the point of the book is going to be to promote action. So these websites that I'm creating, it's about, not just, here's all the scary stuff about technocracy. Here's what you can actually do about it. And so there's a lot of back and forth, and the websites change. And so I'm trying to figure out how to extract the data so that the data that I'm putting in there is timeless, regardless of how the website changes and everything else. But yeah, it's books and media in general will be completely transformed.
Yeah. And I should clarify, the book industry as we know it is toast, right? So I don't mean that books will all vanish. In fact, I think there will be many more books, because you'll be able to instantly generate whatever book you want. And just like the process you described, people like those that you know and those that I know, we will put out digital books that are written with the help of AI, but have special philosophies and have special actionable knowledge that's built into those books. And we will be bypassing traditional publishers. I think the traditional publishing model of one book for the mass audience that's what's really toast. And the process of writing and editing and publishing a book that takes a year, that's toast. You're going to have instant book generators. And the reason I know that is because I'm going to launch one before the end of this year. And you're going to be able to generate a book at no cost, free of charge, on a web page on any topic you want. And then you'll be able to download it, download the PDF. And if you don't like it, you can generate another one. And you think about it, Aaron, like recipe books. Does anybody need a recipe book? No. You just ask for the recipe you want. You don't need a book, right? Does anybody need a how-to book on, home repair? No, you ask the engine for that. So what authors need to do, human authors still have intrinsic value to society. I'm an author, you're an author, but we have to rethink how we communicate that information to consumers of that information, which is exactly what you were talking about. The book format is one format, but you can take a book and using AI agents like what you're putting together there with your Spark hardware, you can take a book and have the book generate a podcast, have the book generate a documentary, have the book generate a PDF executive summary, have the book even become the basis for scientific research using the new Cosmos engine, and it can conduct science research on the science papers based on the premises that you have in your book. So what I call a nugget of knowledge can spawn multiple systems of ingestion. It can be an audio podcast. It can be a graphic. It can be a graphic novel. It can be all of these things. It can be a series of articles, a docuseries, whatever. It is like you said, Aaron, some people want to learn visually, some people auditory, some people hands-on, some people want to have 3D space. Great. Every piece of knowledge will be available in every format. And AI is going to allow the people who have the knowledge to communicate in all those ways, and it's not going to be writing a book manuscript. That's my point.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. In fact, I spend a lot of my time now. My goal in life wasn't to be an author. I write a book because it's a way to convey information, but I would certainly like to convey information more effectively. And I realized books are, how many people buy books and don't read them? I think that would be a pretty interesting statistic, or only read part of it. And so then it's kind of like, okay, well, what's the right format even for the book? But to your point, when I think about content, it's like, well, this content can be in the format of a meme. If you're thinking about it in terms of you're trying to reach different audiences, it's one idea that you might want to convey. And the way that you would convey that on TikTok is completely different than the way you would convey it on X. And it's completely different based on what the audience is and what the profile is. And so this is going to allow you. So then the important part becomes, okay, well, what are the ideas that I'm trying to convey?
Right.
And then you become more efficient about, is this idea that important to convey? We become more economical about your own time. And this is where it sharpens your own thinking.
And what's really interesting about what you just said is that memes are ways that humans compress tokens of meanings into images, which is exactly what the new DeepSeek OCR AI model is doing in a little bit different way. So can you compress knowledge into 1/10 of the number of tokens needed to express the text that describes the knowledge using images? The answer is yes. That's the breakthrough of DeepSeek OCR. But humans have been doing that forever. Cave art, graffiti, memes. We've been doing this forever. It's a natural part of our human neurology. And you're absolutely right. And possibly text for a lot of people is not going to be the most efficient way in order to conduct that SFT, supervised fine-tuning training of your own brain. Images, movies. I think we're going to see AI models that actually think in world renders of 3D space. They're actually going to compute in physics. They're going to run simulations as the tokens that produce the thinking, like reasoning models that do not reason in language. They're going to reason in essentially 3D space representations of a simulated world. And when that happens, oh my goodness, man, you realize, I know you realize this, Aaron, because you're on the leading edge of this, but when AI models can talk to each other and they can develop ideas without stepping it down to human language, it's going to be a takeoff point for AGI. No question about it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And you brought up a couple of things. You brought up DeepSeek OCR, which I'm trying to get working on the DJX. One of the things about this NVIDIA thing is that the GPU is so new that it doesn't work with everything yet. I've learned patience. I'm like, okay, I'll wait for this for a little bit. I'm going to go explore over here. But there are other things going on, such as there's this. Do you hear this new Xtropic chip? That one of the people in the chat mentioned this as well, but that works completely differently than this typical token system, predict the next word model.
Is that the chunk thinking chip?
I believe that one is the chunk thinking chip.
Okay, yeah. But a lot of LLMs are already doing more chunk thinking in software without the hardware. But you're right. I think once the hardware is actually built for that, you're going to see a leap. I mean, look, the other thing, what that's going to lead to is that tokens are going to become so inexpensive. What are you paying right now for tokens on an API of an engine? You might be paying a few dollars per million input or output tokens, or even less for the smaller models. That's going to drop to pennies and fractions of pennies. And at that point, I put out a podcast on this very point. I said, look, AI tokens are getting a lot less expensive while the quality of AI output is rising rapidly, at the same time that human cognition tokens are becoming more expensive because the cost of living is going up, and food prices, everything that supports a human being. So human tokens are going up in price, but human tokens are going down in quality. And that's, I think, for a number of reasons, including probably the jabs and pollution and heavy metals and all the things that are damaging people's brains. So if you wonder why are corporations replacing people with machines, there's your answer. Just draw the lines. I mean, it's like, it's inevitable. And that's why I did that song, The Replacements. And society is not tracking this. Even Trump is not tracking this yet. He will eventually, as you have mass bankruptcies of lending institutions, because you've got millions of unemployed Americans that can no longer pay off their loans. I mean, you're going to have a banking collapse that's going to make The Big Short look like a walk in the park. If you thought subprime mortgage collapse was bad, wait till 2027. It's going to get ugly.
Well, it is already starting to get ugly, and it's absolutely inevitable. It'll probably be a controlled demolition, in fact. But one of the things people ask me all the time, because I talk about cryptocurrencies and Zano and privacy tokenization and everything. One question that people ask me all the time is, what should I invest in? This is one of the top things, and my answer, I'm not going to go through the normal. I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice, but I do have an answer that has come about in the last few weeks, which is what you should invest in is yourself. You should invest in knowledge. You should invest in figuring out what your purpose is, what your true unique purpose is in life, and what you're really passionate about. And if you don't have the skills for that, acquire those skills. That is above and beyond the best investment that you can make, because to put it simply, we live in a society now where people have jobs they don't like to have insurance that keeps them sick so that they can acquire a financial portfolio of companies that are building a digital prison, and they don't even own that basket of investments. And so people are living these lives of quiet desperation. The future doesn't have to be this place of survival and fear. It can be, we can go on the offense. We can take back control of our own life. And it starts by figuring out what you want to do, and then figuring out how you acquire the skills and the knowledge to do that. What do you think of that approach?
100%. Because if you realize that your current role in society is likely to become obsolete in the next few years, you have this window of opportunity to reinvent yourself. And I even did a podcast on this very point. I said, use AI to reinvent yourself. You can do again, how we were just talking, Aaron, about you can ask AI agents anything and just get a competent model. You use our model or use whatever model you like to use. But what you should do is write out a full resume of all your skills and all your interests, everything that you're good at and everything that you like to do. Just write it up and then paste that into an AI engine with a prompt that's something like, hey, all the jobs we know today are becoming obsolete. Here's my interests and here's my skills. What could I do that would survive the rise of machine cognition and mass job replacement? what kinds of businesses could I start? What kinds of services could I offer? How could I remain relevant in the economy? Boom. And then look at its answer. Take the answer. You tell it, give me 20 ideas. Okay, great. It gives you 20 ideas. You go through that. It might like trigger another idea of your own, or you can take the best of the 20. You take that idea, you feed it back into the AI engine and say, okay, I want to do this. I want you to help me develop a business plan. And I want you to assess the risks. I want you to assess the opportunities. And I want you to tell me how good of a fit that this idea is with my skill set. And remember, these are my skills and these are my interests. How will this fit into my lifestyle? Boom. Run that prompt. Get that answer back. Look at the plan. Take the plan. Paste it back in. Say, hey, take this business plan, and I want you to expand it. I want you to fill in the gaps. I want you to correct the errors. I want you to give an analysis and then be a critic of this business plan. Tell me how this might fail. Tell me what the risk might be. Boom, run that. Now you have an executive report. You got a good plan or a bad plan. You see where I'm going, Aaron. This is recursive reasoning. And use the AI. You don't need to hire a business consultant. Use AI to help you through this process until you get the plan that will help you adapt and advance to stay relevant in this economy. Use AI to help you do that. Very straightforward.
And then what you'll find once you come up with the plan, you can also ask AI how to implement the plan, and you'll find, depending upon what it is, you may be able to completely automate the implementation of the plan. This is where you're going to find single solo entrepreneurs doing the work of a 1,000-person company. And that's not an exaggeration, because somebody mentioned this N8N, which allows you to kind of visually automate different workflows and create your own little agents and everything else. But as you dig deeper and deeper into this, keep asking bigger and bigger questions. Ask the AI, well, how would I go about building this? How could I automate this? Who knows more about this than me? Create a simulated advisory board with those people and have a Socratic dialogue with them. I do that kind of thing all of the time. I have just back and forth, not adversarial, but just, okay, well, let's do a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of brainstorming here. It's great for brainstorming.
You can prompt an AI engine to imagine two opposing experts and to write the dialogue of a debate on the topic that you want. And it'll write the dialogue. It'll point out the strengths and weaknesses of each argument. You should use this kind of format all the time. Again, the limit is just your own imagination. And the shocking thing, Aaron, is that I don't know what it is, but people are reluctant to imagine different ways to do things. Now, this gets back to neuroplasticity. And, as a nutritionist myself, I would argue that reducing neuroinflammation through nutrition is probably a key part of this. Here I am drinking my avocado turmeric smoothie with broccoli sprouts and sulforaphane and everything. I happen to think, I know this, your brain runs on your blood. And your blood is manufactured constantly based on what you eat and drink. So if you want your brain to work better, folks, you got to eat better. You got to clean up your food, clean up your whatever you're drinking, get the toxic personal care products off your skin, because that gets absorbed in. Get off the pharmaceuticals that you can, get off the recreational drugs if you're using them, get off whatever. Clean up your blood, your brain will work better. And I guarantee you, when your brain works better, your life gets better. When your brain works better, now you have a chance of learning how to use AI to then take the next leap, plus 20 IQ points. Now you can function at a super genius level in a society where people are, behind the curve. And, think about this, Aaron. If you had a time travel machine, okay, if you could take even just our model, Brighteon AI, if you could take our model on a laptop back 10 years, just 10 years, and you could use it, you would be considered a god in terms of your knowledge. It would be unfathomable, but that's available to everybody right now. But that's how profound this is. It's time to use, and I'm not saying AI is a god, by the way, not at all. It's not a replacement for God. But what I'm saying is it gives you superhuman capabilities that were unthinkable a decade ago.
I think that that's true. And I think that the gulf between people that are starting to take steps, because it is all incremental. And the improvements are exponential. So the more you're into it, the more you learn how to use it. Even something like prompting, when you get to the point where when I'm creating, usually I have slides for this podcast. Well, I have a branding guide, and that's one, markdown file, and then I have another markdown file that has what the prompts are for using which AI model for image generation, and then I just map the two together. So I create an outline of the content that I'm going to have for the podcast. And then I just have it in one prompt, call a couple of other prompts, and then it spits out an entire list of basically every slide with my exact branding and style related to the content. Well, that took a little bit of time to build up, but then you do this with, what's your email template and everything else. And so every day it gets that much more efficient, and then you can just tweak and refine. Again, it's an iterative process. It's not going to be perfect the first time. You are going to hate the results the first, I don't know, maybe even 10 times. But when you're done tweaking it, you're able to replicate and get more work done than you ever possibly could as one person. I mean, again, we're talking 100x here, and anybody can start doing this. You just have to start. You have to take the first step. It's kind of like people with crypto. Download a wallet, get the crypto, download the AI, try it. There's no hemming and hawing about it. Well, maybe I'll wait and do it. Just try it. And, so we've talked about brightu.ai, but also you mentioned earlier that this is available on a phone and a computer. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How people might be able to buy?
Yes. Well, I just had in studio yesterday, I had Hakeem, who's the founder of AbovePhone.com. And they are now shipping their phones and their laptops with our model pre-installed, running locally with voice recognition. So if you want to find that page, it's abovephone.com/Brighteon, BRIGHTEON. And what's so cool is then using his phone, you can you just talk to it. And this is all offline. You talk to it to enter the prompt. The voice recognition is amazing. And again, it's running locally. And then the engine is installed on the phone. And it's a de-Googled phone, so it's a privacy phone, even though it's a Pixel phone, but it's been mind wiped of Google, right? And it's running its own Above OS operating system that Hakeem's company really innovated that. And then it starts giving you the prompt answer right on your phone. Now, it's slow because it's not a GPU, it's a phone. So, you're getting 5 to 6 tokens per second. So you're going to have to wait to get a long detailed answer. But when else have you ever had the entirety of human knowledge in your pocket? I mean, that has never existed before. And we allow everybody to use our model for free like that. So you don't have to, if you're watching this and you want to put our model on your device, go for it. Do it. You don't have to ask us. Our nonprofit, the CWC, is what actually released this model. It's a nonprofit endeavor. We will never charge you to use the models. You just get it out there. Look, I believe in decentralization. Yeah, there you have the page, abovephone.com/Brighteon. And we were demoing that in the studio actually 2 days ago. And it was amazing. It's like, you can ask it anything. You can ask it about herbs. You can ask it about cancer cures. You can ask it about history, honest money, hyperinflation. I trained it on interviews with Ron Paul, for example, and many, many other people, G. Edward Griffin, you name it. So this is a milestone for human freedom and human knowledge. And the real question, as you say, Aaron, the question is, are people going to choose freedom, liberty, knowledge, independence, or are they going to choose to be sucked in to the Trojan horse technocratic control grid because it's more convenient? Oh, well, that's what everybody else uses. Or people launch a browser and they think Google is the internet. It's like, I can't help those people. You're going to have to up your game to be free. It's just all there is to it, man.
Yes, you do need to up your game to be free. I guess the question is, what can we do about it? Because what I'm finding is that the gulf is so huge that I've just gotten to the point where, kind of like with this podcast, I will, later we'll have a Q&A session or whatever, and at some point I'll just pull up my whatever it is that I'm working on and just start using it. It may not work. I mean, it may be in the middle of developing it, just whatever. I'm going to show people whatever it is that I'm doing. And now I'm to the point where I'm taking my computers with me. And if we're sponsoring an event or whatever, I'm just going to set up my computer and people are going to come by and they're going to start asking questions. But, are there some other things that we can do to maybe help onboard people that either are completely cynical about it or are only exposed to the big tech side of it? Is there anything we can do to make this easier for people?
I think it's what we're doing right now. We can show people that there's a whole different universe. All they have to do is open the door to independent AI, free, downloadable, local inference AI, which is what we provide. You can just go to brighteon.ai and it'll forward you to the brightu.ai website. And once people see it, they can't unsee it. Once people realize that they can have knowledge without censorship. Oh my God, you mean I can ask a question about what are the ingredients in a vaccine without being lectured by my doctor? Yes. The answer is yes. You can get all the answers you want with an AI engine that's not going to lecture you and judge you because you're interested in being healthy and clean and you don't want to be like a spike protein factory walking around. So the answer is yes, but you got to turn the knob. You got to open the door. But it's so easy. It's never been this easy. I mean, this is easier than tying your shoes, man. You just pull up a website and you have instant access to the world's knowledge without censorship. Wow.
It really
is blown.
Yeah, it really is that easy. I remember when we were first talking about this was before you had the downloadable version, but I mean, it's only 7 gigabytes. The process does not take time. It takes a few minutes time to get things set up on your own computer. There's really no excuse to not have, the world's uncensored information at your fingertips if it's going to take, 120 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever it is going to take to load it. It is that easy. And this is that profound. So what you've done is a huge service for humanity. And I want to thank you for all of the time and the effort and the money and everything that you put into this, because I think this is one of the best tools that we have to protect our freedom, but also to help improve ourselves individually.
Well, number one, Aaron, I want to thank you. You've been an inspiration. Your work has been a huge inspiration. We were so honored to have you on as a guest on our show, Decentralized TV, and we'd love to have you back. And I want to collaborate with you on these projects. We're both actually thinking very much along the same lines, like having AI write books, for example, or how to automate agents in order to have your own personalized content ingestion environment. Look, for most of human history, most people have had their ingestion queue determined by globalists or governments or the news media. They've turned on the cable TV and there was CNN. Well, suddenly that was your attention. That was soaking up your most valuable asset, which is your attention. And I like to describe it as attention tokens, which is kind of funny if you know about safe tensors and attention, flash attention, whatever. But attention tokens is your human, like you only have so many minutes of human cognitive attention per day. And up until now, throughout most of history, what got fed into that funnel of your attention tokens was not up to you. And that's how they controlled everybody. Today, that changes because of decentralized open source AI technology. Now, you get to engineer your attention tokens. You get to choose what gets fed into your own neurology. Now, and that used to exist like a century ago, before radio, TV, cable, social media, Reddit, slop, whatever. Before that, people chose what books to read. And that was their attention decision-making algorithm. Now, it's come full revolution. You can choose what news to ingest, and soon, Aaron, you'll be able to render whatever movie you want to see. Already with Suno, I don't buy any music from the crap satanic music industry. I render the music. I write the song I want. Suno gives it to me in 30 seconds, like the replacement song. That's going to happen with movies. It's going to happen with books. It's going to happen with interviews, with podcasts, with everything. You control the ingestion funnel. You decide what comes in because your attention is your most valuable asset from this day forward. Don't waste it. Don't let some corporation choose how you spend your attention tokens. You decide.
And this is what this is about. This whole podcast, everything I'm doing is about this whole technocracy versus freedom aspect. And essentially what is at stake is free will itself. If the technocratic version of this wins, then we have digital currencies that can be censored, that are programmed. Everything's tied to a social credit system that's determined by other people, surveilled by AI, or it's what Mike just talked about, where we really do get to allocate our intention. We get to figure out what we ingest. We figure out how that information gets presented to us. It expands our free will. This is why I say that there's a component to this that is, for those that are very pessimistic about this technology, this expands the number of choices that you can make. If you look at free will and consciousness as being about agency and you being able to make your own decisions, this expands this dramatically. It has the potential to do that. And in fact, the way that Mike's using it, the way I'm using it, the way you could use it, can do that. And it is, I'll tell you, I haven't been this excited in a long time. And you and I will text each other back and forth just about random different things that we're working on. And it's amazing that we do sync up on, we're independently working on some of the same things or having some of the same insights, but it is a magical experience, and one that is, it definitely makes me both optimistic, but also I sense going through a kind of a renaissance of even personal growth using this technology.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you said that, because I feel exactly the same. I mean, it started with, like, I would use our AI engine to solve problems for some of my family members who had health complaints. And I would start prompting our own engine, and it would find solutions that I would share with my family members, and they would use those. Like, that worked. Oh my God. You mean the AI engine actually knows nutrition and the chemistry of it? Yeah, because it's trained on like 1,000 phytochemistry books. So it knows all the interactions and everything. That was just the beginning. Then it became, wait a second, this is like an augmented brain. This is like, exoneurology. Right? So I can take my brain and I can attach this other thing to it while staying in control, because I determine the prompts. And now I can function at a higher level in everything that I do, whether it's dealing with, health problems with family members, or business ideas, or writing code, developing applications, personal growth, personal development, you name it. And what I find now, Aaron, is it's so funny. I've been like physically exercising more this year than I have in many, many years. And every time I'm out jogging, and I only exercise outdoors, but I don't go to a gym. So I have kettlebells in a forest, and I have jogging paths out. I only exercise in the sunshine, running around in shorts, try to get massive sunshine on my skin as much as possible. And every time I do, I have an inspiration every time. And that inspiration is something else that I could test on the AI ecosystem that you and I are describing. And then, I can't exercise without having a breakthrough now. And then I go back and I put that in. Now the feedback loop is just minutes. And I realize, oh my God, that technique worked, that new prompting technique, or that new idea, or that solution, it worked. I get instant feedback. So what used to take a cycle of weeks for human innovation now is compressed into hours. And think about what that means for those of your viewers who are watching, who have great ideas, who are innovators, who are the entrepreneurs, who have the inspiration. You now have the tools at your fingertips to express the highest version of the person that you were put here and meant to be. No joke.
Yep, this is my experience. Also, walking is the same for me, and only outdoors. I have, unfortunately, I'm in New Hampshire, and we're starting to get to that bad part of the year, and that's a bit frustrating, because I've found that a treadmill desk doesn't cut it. It doesn't do the same thing. You actually need the outdoors. You associate it with it, which must be the movement that's doing it. No, it's actually being out in nature. It's being out in the sun. It's it's a completely different ball game. But I think that the way you said it was eloquent, and it hit it right on the head, which is, as you start going through this brainstorming, you're realizing how much is possible, that you basically have this infinite potential out there. And so it causes you to hone in and figure out what is it that is really important to you and why. And that's why I think this is such a great thing in terms of personal growth.
Can I add, Aaron? And by the way, I still have a few more minutes for you if you want to if you want to continue. I think I just want to reemphasize nutrition, because now, see, you need your brain to work at peak performance in this environment, because you need to learn rapidly. And now you have the opportunity to control what you're learning and to really engineer the context of what you're feeding into your brain. But, if your brain is running on, junk food, processed foods, pharmaceuticals, psychiatric drugs, et cetera, it's not going to work at peak performance. You're going to be stunted in what you're capable of doing. And I genuinely believe that physical health, nutritional health, and cognitive performance all go together. They all go together. And I'm not judging anybody for, lack of exercise or whatever, but use this opportunity to up your game in all three of those areas. Exercise is going to oxygenate your brain even better. You're going to have, more flow, more energetic flow and more lymph flow, et cetera. Nutrition, it's going to protect your brain from excitotoxins or from neurodegeneration processes that are very common in the food supply and even pesticides and so on. And then using AI is going to stimulate your brain. And no matter what age that you're at, well, let me ask you this, Aaron. I'm in my mid 50s, and thinking back to my college years in my 20s, I was an idiot then compared to cognition now. I can learn and function at a much higher level now than any time in my life. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. And I've been doing the same thing. I've been keto, and I do a lot of things with fasting, but I've also been focused on, how to make sure that there's no brain fog. So because there really is that symbiosis between physical health and cognitive health and everything else. But yeah, no, I feel like it's an order of actually, it feels like an order of magnitude improvement at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I would say some of this has been just even in the last 90 days, I'm in awe of the rate of development of the technology. Not only, every day I'm looking at, there's a new model for this. DeepSeek OCR comes out, then there's a new language model, then there's a new this, and then you can just plug in the new thing. You can keep your workflow, but then make these tweaks, and then you look at what happened over the span of a week, and it's like, historically, this would have been 5 years worth of work.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I truly feel like that. And I hope others that are listening to this take a first step and start, because I think that if your expectations, you're going to be a slave to the technology, you're going to find out that if you exercise your free will over it, this will expand and improve all aspects of your life.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody watching, if you haven't yet used, let's say, Replit, go to Replit, build an app. And it doesn't matter what it does. Build an app to, look for prices on an e-commerce website or something and bring you back a spreadsheet. I don't care. Just use it. Learn how to use it. Or what was the other one you mentioned? N8N, the visual. I think Anthropic has an experimental engine like that. I'm not into the sort of the layout visual building. I prefer to write Python code and just have AI write the code. Yeah. Maybe that's just the way I'm used to doing it, but I find it has more control, and you got to build in a lot of protections on database connections and things like that. And just visually, it doesn't have the depth yet. Maybe it will soon, probably, but just build something, prompt something. It's just like you said, Aaron, jump in, just start doing it. It's not going to bite you. It's not going to reach out of the screen. It's not going to strangle you. And it's not the devil, I don't care if it renders 6 fingers sometimes. That's just a math problem. And that's getting cleaned up. It's not the devil, but choose the engine that's aligned with your values. So you don't want to use ChatGPT to ask about health. You don't want to use Gemini to ask about honest money, right? You want to use the engines that are aligned with your values. And I think for most of your listeners, that's probably going to be our engine, but our engine's not going to be the best at writing code either, and it's not going to do the high level math problems. It's not designed to win all the scores on all the math benchmarks. That's not its mission. It's designed to answer your questions about health, nutrition, preparedness, survival, off-grid living, history, first aid, decentralization. So every model has its own strength, and you should be using 5 or 6 different models, as I know you do, Aaron, based on based on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep, and review models frequently. Keep an open mind about that. Stay on top of, and you will. I mean, once you start this path, then like I said, I've got an agent that goes around and looks at the stuff that I've built, and then looks at the latest news of the day on what's going on, and gives me advice on new technology I could use to improve what I'm doing, or completely different ways of thinking about what I'm doing that are gaps that I didn't even think of.
Totally.
And it's that's just absolutely a game changer. Well, I don't know how much more time you have. I know we're
I can go to the bottom of the hour if you can, but there's something else I want to mention, because you're the person who first introduced me to Suno, which I understand is actually pronounced Suno by the founder, but whatever, we all call it Suno. And I want your audience to think about this. When Suno first came out, version 1 or whatever they called the first version that was public, it sucked. I mean, the music was horrible, but they stayed at it. And then about a year ago, it became competent, but you had to render 50 or 60 versions of a song to get one that, you really liked. Today, version 5, Suno, it can one-shot an amazing song, or you might have to render just 2 or 3, to get something amazing. Well, that process is what's going to happen to AI robots. Like the first robots that come out and you're going to say, hey, fold my laundry. Yeah, they're going to suck. It's going to be a laughing stock, viral videos of robot fails. Okay. This is great. You fast forward 2 years, 3 years, maybe at the most, that robot, because the hardware is all the same, it's just the software, that robot's going to be expertly folding laundry, and it's going to be a chef in your kitchen. It's going to be chopping celery, making a souffle, and you're going to be blown away. Well, we saw that with Suno. It's going to happen with robotics. Well, oh yeah, there you go. The Will Smith video. Yeah. If you're talking, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Yeah, this is the Will Smith eating spaghetti video, and I don't know how long ago this was, a year or two ago. It was not very long ago, and I remember when the video on the left came out. Here, let me...
Yeah, this became like the benchmark for video creation, is Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Yeah, this became the benchmark. And I remember when it came out, everybody was saying, oh, well, Hollywood doesn't have anything to worry about. And this is a perfect example of where people were saying, AI is a joke. AI is not going to go anywhere. And so this was, I'll have to look up the date, but I don't think it was more than a year and a half ago, this video on the left. And then the video on the right is the new, I think, VO model or whatever, 3.1. And so you can see this is the delta in just a short period of time. And this is exactly what you said with Suno, what's happened with music. It's starting to happen with writing. So if your view is that you saw something in AI a year ago that looked like it wasn't providing good output, and therefore you wrote off the entire sector, really it would behoove you to stay on top of this and to do an investigation and see and start tracking where it's actually going. And what you said about robots is true as well. And actually, I wanted to bring up this topic because I think we started to talk about it the last time you were on, and you're the one who introduced me to this idea, and I didn't realize that China is ahead of the United States in 57 out of 64 different categories of technology. And so I went down that rabbit hole, and then you can actually go to YouTube and you can start looking at these things. Well, what is the current state of robotics like in China? What is the current state of quantum computing? What is the current state of this? And then lo and behold, you can see with your own eyes what's going on in China, and it will stun you. So if your viewpoint is still that America is the #1 innovative country in the world and that we lead in all these categories, you are significantly out of date. And so there was something. So yesterday, the CEO of NVIDIA came out and said that he thinks that China is going to win the AI race. And this has created all kinds of controversy online. And there are a lot of different branches that we can go to talk about this. But what do you think about it? First of all, just generally, what do you think of that comment that he made?
Well, I want to remind the audience that Jensen Huang is Taiwanese, and he's a genius. And he's not only a pioneer in microchip architecture, but he's a pioneer in business. and we should take his words seriously. And I think he's a national treasure for Taiwan and for America. And what he's saying is I think it's more in the context of kind of heed this warning that China is making leaps forward that were unthinkable 2 years ago in terms of, for example, open source AI models now, DeepSeek and others from Alibaba, Qwen, you name it, Z, they only lag about 3.5 months behind the best US models in terms of their capabilities. 3.5 months. I mean, it's extraordinary. And China is releasing those models for free. Also, given that, I lived in Taiwan, I toured throughout Asia, and I speak a fair amount of Chinese. I know the Chinese culture very well, and I have tremendous respect for the intellect and discipline of the Chinese people. And this is why I always warned about the problem with, for example, California universities would penalize you for being Asian. They would penalize you, and as a result of that discrimination against Chinese and Japanese and Koreans and others in the university system, we ended up lacking hundreds of thousands of engineers in America that were, based on a meritocracy, they were the best qualified students to enter those programs and to graduate as high-level engineers. Instead, we have woke universities that graduated people that were lesser qualified compared to, in many cases, Chinese people, or it could be Japanese, it could be Taiwanese, Korean, whatever the case may be. You get my point. Thai, Vietnamese, et cetera, all very, very capable. This is why China is now graduating 500% more STEM graduates, science, math, et cetera, engineering, compared to the United States. When you combine that with the fact that China's annual terawatt hours of aggregate energy output is now over 10,000 terawatt hours, which is more than twice the aggregate energy output of the United States, which is only around 4,400. Then you realize, given that the power input is the key critical factor into compute and AI generation, you realize they've got the power, they've got the engineers, they've got the industry. The only thing they don't have is all the high-end microchips because of the tariffs and the restrictions from the US. So China is building their own microchip lithography advancements that are going to leapfrog everything that comes out of Europe or the United States. See, you can't put China in a box and have an embargo against knowledge and technology and math. China is going to outproduce you. They're going to outthink you. They're going to out-engineer you. They're going to win the AI race. I actually agree with Jensen Huang. China's going to win the AI race on our current path. Trump's talking about, we're going to build 10 nuclear power plants. Okay, great. A bunch of Westinghouse AP1000 nuke plants. Yeah, they're going to be done in 2044 or something. It's over by then, man. It's over. The race is done. China's been building energy infrastructure while we've been tearing it down because of the climate cultism nonsense that also impacted Europe. And yeah, I'm getting on a little bit of a rant here. I hope you don't mind. But we made so many bad mistakes 10 years ago, 15 years ago about wokeism and climate cultism. And now we are in the FO stage of the FAFO curve of climate cultism and woke idiocy. We're in the faux stage. And the faux stage is when you find out that you effed up 20 years ago. That's where we are, Aaron.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. I agree. And you mentioned this last time you were on, and I've spent a lot of time digging into this, and this absolutely seems to be the case. But one thing that I will say is, again, with all the doom out there, this is about technocracy. I don't even think it's about the U.S. versus China. This is about technocrats. These are companies in China that are pushing this. You even look at the U.S. You have Oracle, OpenAI, Microsoft, all of these companies. These are all global companies. These are not America first companies that are only working within the United States. And so what they're going to do is, I put some of these memes out earlier today showing this idea that I'm expecting propaganda posters that are going to encourage people out of a sense of patriotism to use less water and use less electricity so that we can defeat the Chinese. I would bet that something like this ends up happening. And exactly. I bet people will actually fall for it, but realize that this is going to be done to prop up technocratic, large, big tech corporations. And we just saw today that OpenAI is looking for subsidies and financial support from the federal government to do what they're doing. And Now, I view this as an opportunity. Here's my take on this. My take is big tech has an attitude of it's winner take all. This is what happened during the dot-com boom. This is why they overinvest, but they realize that if they're the one that is the last one standing, they get all of the riches. This is why why Zuckerberg will spend $1.5 billion on one developer. Well, you have things going on with these Chinese organizations as well. This all benefits us. Why? Because we get to use this compute power at a loss. They're burning cash. They're burning venture capital. They're burning all of this other stuff. We get access to this. China's putting out open source models. Mike's putting out his models. We can take those models and take that technology, put it into our own self-custody. We can grab our own data sets, and we can protect ourselves from being forced to take their centralized technocratic solution. That's why, to me anyway, there is real hope here in this battle that's playing out amongst these different, I'll call them companies or organizations, whether they're based in the United States or China.
You nailed it. This is not about China versus the United States. That's what U.S. leaders want us to believe. This is about humanity versus the technocracy, the prison planet system. And they want us all to be enslaved one way or another under their control. And this is why I think it was Senator Hawley is just announcing now some kind of new law that requires companies to report anytime they're replacing a human worker with AI. And you can see where this is going. What are they going to do? Outlaw the firing of people and replacing them partially or fully with, let's say, a more efficient, more accurate, less costly process for customer support? What are you going to do? You're going to turn the entire U.S. economy into like a food stamp program for salaries? I mean, that is not going to compete with the world. It's not. And yes, I have compassion for American workers. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. I'm trying to empower people. I'm trying to show people how to survive this, how to navigate, how to up your game, how to move to the next level of this and stay relevant in an economy that's fully automated. And the other thing, Aaron, to think about this is corporations don't want you to be human in the first place. When you join a corporation and they say, here, we need the TPI reports for this spreadsheet, file these, they're not asking you to be human. They're asking you to be a machine. Be a machine and stop being human. That's been the middle manager, white collar workplace for generations in America. Here, data entry. Come on. You want to be human, you can't have a job that, of course, is nothing but demanding that you be a machine in the first place. So this is a great opportunity to rise out of that. If you get fired from your job doing something that's just so automated, take that as a blessing if you can, financially survive it and take yourself and your inspiration and your skills to the next level. Do something that machines can't do. This is an opportunity, but who knows what the government's going to do in this? They're going to try to stop it and stop innovation, and then we're going to lose the race to superintelligence. I mean, it's kind of obvious. That's where it's going.
Well, it is obvious, and we've already done this with other employment law. We've tied health insurance to employment. Then we've put in place all of these woke employment policies and everything else, which makes us not competitive globally. And then we move to the next level is, well, we're going to solve this by implementing tariffs, which is backfired. So, again, embrace the technology, improve yourself, and there's a silver lining. There's a better future here. And I say embrace personal change and growth as opposed to, getting into a scarcity fear mindset.
Absolutely. We are no longer in the scarcity economy. We're in the abundance economy. And in the abundance economy, all you have to do is choose abundance and understand how it works. And then you latch on to that phenomenon, which is exactly everything that we're talking about here today. And let me add another layer to this, which is all about energy. Now, I've interviewed experts in low energy nuclear reactions, which used to be called cold fusion. Cold fusion is a very real phenomenon. It exists. It's been replicated in hundreds of labs around the world, including by the US Navy and laboratories in Japan. Cold fusion can produce energy by converting mass to heat in water at a relatively slow pace. It's not as dramatic as fission or fusion, hot fusion. It's more of a slow pace, but it's great for heating buildings. However, you could use cold fusion right now to generate steam from water and drive turbines. And you could do that without using nuclear material. And yet that technology has been suppressed by our country and by our so-called scientific community since the Fleischmann and Pons experiments at the University of Salt Lake City in 1989. So we are living in a country where innovation it's being stifled, where people who invent things, they have their patents classified and stolen from them. And the best minds that actually have something to contribute to society are censored by YouTube, blocked by Google, or ostracized by polite society. That's got to change if America's going to have a future. This is a time to let the mavericks do what they do best. People like you and I, Aaron, who have been heavily censored and deplatformed. We have a lot to contribute to this society. We can help make America great again, truly. But we are still being punished and we are still being deplatformed. I can't even post a video on YouTube to this very day because they voice printed me and they actually give a strike to everybody who even posts my voice. The only way I can go on YouTube is to alter my voice. That's Google. It's an anti-information company that wants humanity to fail, whereas I want humanity to succeed. So that's my end cap on today's conversation.
Well, that's a great place to end it. Well, thank you for coming on again. Thank you for everything that you've done, everything you continue to do, and I look forward to having you back and look forward to being on your show again, because this conversation, it'll be amazing to see how much has changed just in between now and the next time we talk. It'll feel like 10 years.
No kidding. Yeah, look, it's always an honor to join you, Aaron, and I really appreciate you having me on. Happy to join you again anytime. And we probably need to do this fairly frequently because of the rapid pace of change here. But I'll share my projects with you. I know you'll share yours with me, and we're going to share them with the world. Let's just see what we can do with all this and help empower humanity in the process. So thanks for having me.
I'm in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Organic foods deliver more antioxidants. Our organic adaptogen ginger latte recipe delivers the remarkable health benefits of functional mushrooms, ginger, and more. Get your recipe kit today at the Health Ranger store.